everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra the TBR0 and my goal is to lessen my physical TBR one book at a time. This vlog is for Battle of the Booktuber, hosted by Danni. It is a fun competition in which we figure out which booktuber is the best person at recommending books for other booktubers. For this vlog, I'm focusing on Booktuber C. This person recommended two books to me that I'm very intrigued by. The two books include Dead Girls by Nekesa Afia and Hood Feminism by Meki Kendall. I am not gonna lie, I'm really excited about both of these books. Both of them have themes, certain social commentary, just elements in general that I'm really looking forward to, and I will say that Booktuber C has done their research. I'm really impressed, especially because both books have been on my radar for quite some time, and they're both books I've wanted to read for quite some time. So this person has done a good job in recommending books that obviously I know that I'm interested in. When it comes to Dead Girls, this one is a historical mystery set in the 1920s Harlem, and that just hits so many elements for me that I really love. I'm a huge sucker for historical mysteries at this point. I find them to be comfort reads for me. I really enjoy the fact that we have modern day authors who are reflecting on historical times, and oftentimes we are getting modern viewpoints, finding progressive, thoughtful characters, especially in our women sleuths. So this one's definitely a contender. I'm really looking forward to it. My expectations might be too high. I might be too excited. So Booktuber C, again, you've done a really good job. I have really high hopes for this one. I think I'm really gonna like it. And the reason why I think this booktuber has done a really good job is because in our competitor bios that we provided to each other prior to giving recommendations, I said that I really like mysteries, but I didn't necessarily mention that one of my favorite subgenres is historical mysteries, meaning that I'm assuming this person's either paying attention and watching some videos, listening to me talk about books, or yeah, they made a really good guess. And then we have Hood Feminism by Meki Kendall. I also really enjoy nonfiction. I have the goal of reading more nonfiction this year, actually. So again, this booktuber seems to really know what I'm wanting to read, what I like to read. So I'm pretty impressed that this person kind of took a chance by recommending nonfiction. But for me, I don't think that's a very big chance because you know I'm gonna love it. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm telling you, I'm really excited for Booktuber C. I think you did a really good job. And that's not a great perspective for me as a competitor because, you know, we kind of want people to choose bad books for ourselves so that we end up being winners. But yeah, so both of these books seem really good to me. I'm really excited about the social commentary on feminism, the various forms of feminism we see in modern day and in history, and the fact that we do miss out, especially on BIPOC women's perspectives on this. That's what I'm thinking this is going to be about, and I'm just really looking forward to learning, to being someone who is just absorbing the information, who's gaining a perspective that I don't have myself. And it's going to be so thought-provoking. I already know it's going to be great. What's really cool about this, and I'm going to have to double check who the narrator is, but I did get the audiobook for Hood Feminism, so I'm probably going to be doing an immersive read where when I have the time, I'm going to be physically reading while I listen, and that's my favorite kind of reading. But also, if I get busy, I'll just have the audiobook, and it's going to feel a bit more like a podcast. That's how I always feel when I'm listening to nonfiction. So I think this is going to be a great experience. And I don't think I mentioned, but with Dead Girls, I have the ebook and I have the audiobook. So I'm probably going to immersively read that too, unless I feel I can just lean on the audio, then that's probably what I'm going to do. So, oh my gosh, what an intro. Yeah, basically other competitors should be looking out at this point because just on the two titles alone, this is a very, very strong competitor who's given me a mystery, who's given me a nonfiction, and yeah, I'm pretty impressed. So maybe I'm talking up this booktuber too much. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving them a big head before we even get into the books. But stay tuned to see what I think. The book I'm going to start with is Dead Girls, and the reason why I'm starting it is actually because Danni, our host, our queen of this entire competition, our puppet master, she's actually going to read it with me. We're going to do a buddy read for it, and I'm really looking forward to that experience. So stay tuned for my first update about Dead Girls. I am 50% of the way through Dead Girls, and I am not having a good time. I am so disappointed and so surprised. I'm sure that Booktuber C, whichever competitor that you are, you're also devastated, especially because in the first few chapters, I was gripped. I was invested. I was really intrigued by Louise as a main character, as our amateur sleuth, but unfortunately, it feels as though it's such a fractured narrative with so many holes and unsaid things that need to be said that I'm getting really frustrated with it. And yes, there's still 50% left in the narrative, so maybe the author will be able to clean some of these issues that I'm having up, but so far it is looking bleak. Let me backtrack and talk about the beginning of the novel. So we open with a prologue 10 years prior to the main events of the book. So we're in 1916. Louise is a young teen in Harlem, and she ends up being a victim of an abduction. She's abducted on the street and wakes up in this room, in this prison of sorts, with other young Black teens like her, and she realizes that they are in some deep trouble. She's gonna need to take her own life in her hands when the attacker enters the room, and that's exactly what she does. She fights him off, she saves the other young girls just like herself, and overnight she becomes Harlem's hero. This title has stayed with her into the present. So 1926, she's still called that once in a while by community members. People still recognize her on the streets. A cab driver recognized her when they got in the back of the cab after a night of dancing. And so it's just been something that's hung over her shoulder for so long, and she really doesn't like it. She finds it really frustrating when people bring it up, especially because there is this expectation that she would have become this great being, and in reality, she works for a cafe and she spends her nights going dancing with her friends, and she doesn't really have any interest in marriage, kids, anything that really anyone is expecting of her. She actually has an interest in being something else. And so she's a really complex character in that. And she's got kind of this rough history with her family, with her father especially. Her mother died when she was young. And so there is some mentions of loss and her trying to figure out who she is as a young Black woman in Harlem, pretty much on her own, beyond the fact that she does have a couple close friends that she can lean on, including Rosa Maria, who seems to be her girlfriend. That is one issue that I'm having with this book, is that there are so many characters that we are seeing them coming and going, passing through the night like ships, and they all just feel like caricatures, like they're placeholders. They're not real people. Rosa Maria is an example of that. I think that we've seen her maybe 3 or 4 times halfway through this book, and maybe she's spoken a couple times. We really don't get anything in her personality, in her feelings towards Louise, and why they love each other so deeply, and the tension that comes with being a gay woman, especially a gay woman of color, in 1926. With the mystery at hand, we have a few women who are young, Black, who worked as, to my understanding, in like speakeasies, in bars. Some of them have been forced to be sex workers, and they are being found dead, strangled. 3 women at the opening of the book are dead at this point. The 3rd woman is actually discovered by Louise outside of her work. And so she finds herself wrapped up in this, not because she finds a dead body, but because one night she punches a police officer in defense of this other young woman. The police officer takes her in and they strike a deal. Apparently, she needs to help out this Inspector Gilbert, who happens to also be British, for no reason, whatever. And he basically makes an ultimatum saying, hey, you help me investigate this because you can get into certain places, you can approach certain people that I wouldn't have access to, and in exchange, we'll just forget that you punched one of my cops. Okay, cool. So now begins the investigation from Louise's perspective, and she does do a lot. She does cover a lot of ground, I'll admit. She's going to different clubs, going to different people's family homes, and asking the victims' parents and friends about things. But beyond that, I feel like nothing's ever happened at all. She's just roaming the streets of Harlem, and she's being really reckless about it. I think that's the thing I'm having the most frustration with, is that she's collecting clues. She proceeds not to pass most of it on to Inspector Gilbert. Their partnership is non-existent, and he's actually kind of an idiot. Like, I've seen him interact with suspects, with the family members of the victims to ask them questions, to obviously help bring justice to their loved ones, and he just is terrible at it. I'm like, you weren't trained, apparently. And so, of course, this duo are just horrible at investigating anything, because I also don't have any faith in Louise, because she just keeps doing things that don't make any sense. And whenever they do meet, I feel like no information is being exchanged. Like, oh, tell them about that ring. Tell them about this person and what they said to you. Tell them about the fact that you were attacked at 3 a.m. wandering the streets of Harlem, even though you knew that probably wasn't safe, but you decided you need to go for a walk, and you didn't tell anyone about any of these things. I'm just like, what are you doing, Louise? Like, who are you now? Because you're certainly not the same person you were in 1916 when you were being smart and a go-getter and a fighter. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's really frustrating, and I think it's because the way that the narrative formatting is that the chapters are very short. So it's really just scene, 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 without any break of contemplation where we get Louise's thoughts, her theories, her kind of mulling over the clues that she's gathering and trying to figure out what's the most important element of the entire story. And also, she's just meeting so many men. There are so many men characters in this book, I actually can't handle it. I could probably name 7 to 10 at this point, at the 50% mark, and each of them we've kind of maybe passed once or twice. And I'm like, what's the significance of them? How are we supposed to juggle any of them? Because I don't really know why any of them are important, and it's a lot. It is a snarl of a novel, if I'm going to be completely honest. I just can't keep up. There are so many scenes, so fractured together, and like I said, Louise is just not being safe. There is a certain scene that was extremely angry about, specifically because Louise put herself in a position to experience extreme harm, and I'm going to be providing a content warning for this, including sexual assault. It was really horrible to read through. I hated that chapter, and it's never really explained as to why she was in that predicament in the first place, why she elected to take certain actions that led to that risk in the first place. I really didn't like the way the author handled that, and I can't trust the author at this point for the next half of the book to actually be having Louise act soundly and rationally and have faith in her to actually solve these crimes, because at this point I should have an inkling of who the suspects are, what's their motive, what's their connection to the characters, and what is Louise thinking? Who's her main suspect at the moment? I don't know, and I just don't think it's a fair play mystery, because I'm predicting that what's going to happen in the end is there's just going to be a few quick summarizations of random things, and Louise is going to be like, aha, this is the killer, and I'll be like, okay, that's the killer then. So I'm pushing through though, because I am doing this as a buddy read with Danni, and so we're gonna finish this novel, and I will be providing you at least one update to wrap it up, if anything. But I just needed to let you all know preemptively that I'm having a lot of issues with it. Oh gosh. Oh no! I will say that if anything, we still have hood feminism, and I'm so sorry to you all that if I end up not liking this book, you will hear from me again in the end. So yeah, let's just hope that we can get through this book and there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel where I can appreciate some elements in the second half. I finished Dead Girls, and it did not get better. It actually got worse. I am so sorry, Booktuber C. I don't know what to say. Oh my gosh. I'm not sure how this review is gonna move forward because I'm really nervous about it. I'm so upset. I'm so angry that this book is not gonna be getting a positive rating from me. And yes, Battle of the Booktuber is a competition, but in the end, this comes down to book recommendations, and the entire culture around book recommendations on Booktube or any other social media site is supposed to be positive. We are recommending books with good intentions. We're hoping that this is a new favorite for someone else that we can share in the book joy experience. And when a book doesn't land as a favorite or as like a much loved, well-liked book, it hurts everyone in the process. The person who read the book, the person who recommended the book, there's no way to frame this in a positive way. And when I signed up for Battle of the Booktuber, this is the last thing that I thought would happen. I don't know how to talk about this book because I'm going to try and do it objectively. That's the way we're going to do it. So Louise as a character had too many flaws. and too many hypocritical moments. At the beginning of the book, she is meant to be this strong, independent woman, a survivor, someone who refuses to be a victim again. She has street smarts, where she's supposed to be someone we trust, who is capable. And then throughout the narrative, we're taught that she's not, actually. She's not someone that we should trust. She's someone who actually, with every passing day, we're surprised that she continues to be alive, because she puts herself in a lot of reckless situations, and then she proceeds not to get help when those bad things happen to her. And I was flummoxed. I was so surprised that this is the person who we're supposed to believe is going to track down a serial killer. Also, as far as the narrative structure goes, I feel as though the author put too much on her plate, too many scenes, too many suspects, and there were moments toward the end of the book where I paused to think, she's forgotten about that clue. She's forgotten about that suspect. She doesn't remember that Louise has already done X, Y, or Z. And that's not a great place to be as a reader, because you're supposed to feel as though you can trust the author, that you know that they're juggling a complex mystery and they are capable in bringing it to fruition and having a satisfactory ending. And that's not what happened. There were a lot of moments where I was frustrated because of the way the narrative structure was, and the ending was really anticlimactic. The standoff scene between Louise and our serial killer left much to be desired, because there were loose ends involving certain victims, involving certain decisions that the author obviously made at the beginning of the book, and maybe changed her mind and forgot to edit, or completely forgot that she had that decision made in the first place. And the serial killer in itself, the reveal of who it was, did not make sense. Oh my gosh. And the sad thing is, we were told with a lot of narrative to go who the killer was, and I kept waiting for it to be a twist. No, it can't be this person, because that's kind of silly. And then it ended up being that person, and I didn't understand. And on top of that, by the end of the novel, the people that Louise did trust, one person in particular I was baffled by, because this person was a blatant racist, had actually verbally abused her and made threats to her in the beginning of the book, and it did not add up. I'm really I don't know how else to explain this book, but we're gonna move on from it, because I think that's for the best for everyone. But Booktuber C, I am so sorry that this did not work out. We have one more book that I'm very nervous about now, just because of how book one went, but I'm still feeling as though it's going to be a slam dunk, and that is Hood Feminism. I've already started it. I'm one chapter in, and I'm already enjoying the voice. I really love the narrator, who is the author herself, her perspective on feminism, the amount I've already learned about what feminism is, what it should be, what people perceive it as, whether you are white, BIPOC, LGBT+, or some combination thereof. And I'm already really appreciating the comparisons of privilege versus universal necessity, universal rights. So yes, I have high hopes. So don't worry, viewer at home. I think it's going to be okay. I think this is going to turn it around. But for now, as far as Dead Girls go, I'm going to ruminate over my rating. I'll reveal for the competition what the rating is at the end of this vlog. But don't worry, Hood Feminism is going to save us, I think. Yes. Good morning. I am at page 97 of Hood Feminism, meaning I am well over a third of the way through the book. I meant to update you earlier, but you know what? I'm not going to apologize for it, because I'm obviously having a really good time and I didn't want to stop reading. Mickey Kendall is honestly such a strong writer. I'm listening to the audiobook, which she narrates, and that obviously expands my experience by 20 something points, because I really like her voice, and you can hear the emotion in it as well, her conviction, her determination to get her points across. And I really, really appreciate how she tackles the intricacies and the complexity surrounding feminism, both its historical significance and how we see it today, how it actually isn't benefiting everyone that it's meant to benefit, because it's actually forgetting to acknowledge those who are in minority groups. On top of the fact that it actually isn't providing assistance to universal needs, universal rights, because we keep getting wrapped up in this idea of providing people with privilege. And I find that really fascinating, because it's a scope that I've never really looked at feminism through. And I will say that with this book, the author does a really great job of providing us cultural references, both pop culture, but also significant events that have happened throughout history within the United States, across the United States as well, to show that it's not just one area of this large country that is dealing with feminism, probably in an inappropriate way. I have had to look up a lot of instances, which is just good for you all to know at home if you want to pick up this book, because there is a balance between informing us and also not hand-holding us. There are terms that I've had to look up, and I appreciate that I'm provided the responsibility on my own, if I truly want to learn, that I should look up these terms. And a lot of times the terms are referencing concepts or conceived norms that we are aware of, but I just didn't know that they had a term. And so actually, while I've been reading, I've had my computer up and I have looked through a handful of tabs. So there were some instances, because I'm really bad about pop culture, and so I didn't really know some of the elements that are going on. So for instance, there was a controversy with Lena Dunham and an interview with Amy Schumer at the Met Gala, and I had to look that up because I didn't really know what that was. There was also the controversy over Hugo Schweizer. I didn't know who he was either, but I was really glad that I was able to look him up. She also references Gamergate, which as soon as I was reading into it, I was like, oh, I know this. I just didn't realize it was called Gamergate. White Flight Suburbs, the killing of Rakia Boyd, a certain instance that happened in Florida to Trayvon Martin, misogynoir. So all of these terms or events weren't on my radar. And Mikki Kendall doesn't, enter it blindly. She does provide some context and allows for those events to help support whatever argument she's making. But I did have to look them up if I wanted to fully grasp what she was saying. And that's not a critique. I actually appreciate when authors view us as capable beings and we can actually look into these things ourselves. So I think that this is a fine balance, where if you really want to know more about a certain intricate detail, then feel free to do the work yourself, do research. And it doesn't hinder my experience if I didn't look into them, because she does give us context clues so we know what actually happens. But if I really wanted to know the ins and outs of a certain situation, then I would have to look into it myself. So for now, I'm feeling really informed, while also unfortunately a bit at a loss, because it's that type of read where you're like, oh my gosh, right, all of these things need to be fixed. All of these things are inappropriate or honestly a tragedy in their own way. And I, as an individual, especially I as someone who's a white woman, I feel as though I don't know how to help. And it's very frustrating. There were a few moments even when we got specific experiences from Mikki Kendall, especially in the realm of domestic violence, that often made me tear up, because it's a lot to take in, but she does it in such a great way where you're grateful that you're reading it, that she put it to the page, and that she's taken the time to create this book. So being at 40%, I still have 60% to go. I'm hopefully going to remember to provide another update before I finish the book, but I mean, I don't know, no promises, because I'm really enjoying the audio, and if I keep going, I keep going, and that's that. So anyways, I will see you in my next update. I finished Hood Feminism earlier this morning, and I really don't have much more to say about it because I still found it informative. I really appreciated Mikki Kendall from beginning to end, her thoughts on a wide range of topics that are all negatively impacted by the way feminism is performed today, or is not necessarily performed in the right way, and how there are so many people across multiple minority groups who are hindered by the way that we present feminism. And I found that really interesting, and I really appreciated it. The only criticism that remains, I suppose, and I'm already forming an argument in my head why I should probably take that criticism back, is that I'd like a bit more focus on the interpersonal relationships and how we can support one another in that way, because a lot of times we are focusing on national issues, state issues, and that is really important. And the reason why I'm debating about retracting that criticism is because a lot of times when we're discussing problems that affect us at such a grand scale, a lot of it is due to the fact that we have certain politicians in power, that these large companies are reinforcing these issues, these large kind of cultural issues, the media, marketing, and it kind of goes hand in hand with for me, I'm a bit more knowledgeable about the climate crisis, and we often like to blame the individual for not, you know, bringing their carbon footprint to zero, and oh, look at you, you're drinking, you know, that drink out of a straw and all those things, when in reality, a majority of the waste, of the toxins, of the problems that are actually speeding up climate change to a terrifying degree are the large companies behind it, and how they're producing their products, how they are transferring those products, and what they're doing with the waste afterwards. And so I kind of understand where Mikki Kendall is coming from when a lot of her discussions are surrounding infrastructure and systemic problems. So either way, I think this is a book that brings up really important discussions. I learned so much, and I actually think I only broke the surface, and that's one of the things that I always think about with nonfiction. I'm like, you can't read it once. You cannot read it once because there's so much information to take in. So this is definitely going to have to be a book that I'll keep in my back pocket, and I'll have to return to it. I'll have to revisit it, reread certain chapters that I found that I really needed at the moment. For instance, there's ones on like gun violence, on culture, as far as like women's beauty, women's bodies. There's also work culture, education. There's so much to unpack, and I just don't think that one read through is enough to completely grasp everything that Kendall was telling us. So clearly this is a really strong book, and I'm going to continue to recommend it to everyone under the sun who hasn't read it, because I just think it's so important. That means it's going to be a 5-star for me. And now we've reached the end of the vlog, and it's time for me to lock in my ratings for the competition of Battle of the Booktuber. But first of all, I really want to thank Danni from Danni Dabbles for just like coming up with this great idea, for orchestrating it, for really like supporting us as we've been like dealing with these various projects. And I can't wait to see the competition as it progresses. And also thank you to my fellow competitors in round 1. We've got Nell, Katie, and Lotta, and I'm just hoping you're having as much fun as I am in this process. And yeah, I can't wait to see what you all think of the books I've recommended to you, and how this all ends up. How is it going to end? I don't know. But now for the rating. So the first book that was recommended to me, the top book, was Dead Dead Girls by Nekesa Afia. And I am just, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. You know, I don't have to tell you. I don't have to rehash things. And I'm unfortunately going to have to give it 0.75 stars. Obviously that rounds up to a 1 star. Like for instance on Goodreads, a site that doesn't provide quarter-star ratings, it's going to be a 1 star for me. And that means that I probably should have DNF'd it in a different world, in different circumstances. But with it being a buddy read with Danni, and on top of the fact that I'm doing it for this competition, I really wanted to give it my all. I didn't, and that's why it's getting the rating that it got. I totally understand why it was recommended to me though. On paper, the synopsis 100% sounds like it's up my alley. It's one of my favorite subgenres within mystery. I really love historical mysteries. So I understand why Booktuber C recommended it to me, but it didn't work out. But don't worry, we finished strong with Hood Feminism. This was the second book recommended to me by Booktuber C, and I'm giving it 5 stars. I found it really important, really informative, very accessible as a nonfiction, to the point where a lot of people could listen to this or read this and not feel as though they're out of their element, that they can fully understand what Mikki Kendall is trying to explain to them, and also putting a bit of responsibility on us. If you want to know more, you should look up more. Be a proactive citizen in this world. So yeah, 5 stars, well deserved. I know that for this competition, there is a risk of certain tiebreakers having to be put in place. And one of the questions we are asked to say by the end, especially because I have a 5 star in this video, would I put it as an all-time favorite? No, but that's just because nonfiction doesn't tend to be in the all-time favorite slot for me. And I still did kind of feel a bit wanting in certain areas, even though I found it so informative. So yeah, a really strong ending to this vlog. And also, we might as well have a bit of fun and have me guess who this person is that is the mysterious Booktuber C. Well, this one actually doesn't feel very hard to me. It doesn't seem as though it's going to be that difficult to guess, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to be shocked. I think it's Nell from Nell Diamond, mainly because as soon as I saw these 2 titles, I was like, this is Nell. This has got to be Nell. Because one, she and I are the only ones, I think, in this foursome who tend to kind of lean towards nonfiction. I think Nell reads the most nonfiction among the 4 of us. I've never really seen Lotta or Katie pick up nonfiction. That's not to say they don't read it, but when I'm thinking of nonfiction among the four of us, I'm thinking it's Nell. And she totally would be the type of person to take a risk and recommend a nonfiction book, even though I said nowhere in my competitor bio or in my interests that nonfiction is a kind of, genre that I'm looking into at the moment. With that said, on my channel, I am trying to read more nonfiction. It would be really nice to be able to say that I've read one nonfiction a month, and maybe Nell picked up on that. Maybe she heard me say that once. So I could just see her being really meticulous and being like, yeah, I'm going to take a risk on this, even though it's not really a risk, because who would not find this super interesting and super informative? On top of the fact that Nell is also the only other person I know of who has read historical mysteries or mysteries really in general. Katie and Lotta do delve into mysteries, but I think that they are more of the modern thriller if they're going to pick something up. Like, I know Katie has really liked Kate Alice Marshall, for instance, and Lotta has leaned even into horror a little bit this past year. But when I'm thinking of like a historical mystery, I 100% would think of Nell, especially because one of Nell's favorite books was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And that's a bit more like alternate history. There's different reasons, and there's some kind of fantastical kind of sci-fi elements in there. But when it comes down to it, it is set in like a historical setting, and there is a murder mystery at play. So I feel really confident that this is Nell. So good job to you, Booktuber. See if you don't happen to be Nell. And honestly, it doesn't really matter because I don't think there's any competition in guessing, just feeling like really good about yourself if you guessed right. So that concludes this vlog, this section of the competition for Battle of the Booktuber. And you know what? I'm really glad that this happened. I'm glad that I was able to kind of go outside of my comfort zone and have a good reason to pick up hood feminism, especially because I think nonfiction is one of those genres that I want to read so often, but it's really hard to get the motivation to, even though I know it's going to benefit my life. So, all right, thank you all for getting to the end. I hope you're having a lot of fun watching this competition as it unfolds. Make sure that if you are interested in finding other pieces to this competition, I think I should probably, hopefully by the time it's recorded and uploaded, that it will like have certain links to help you like get to the playlists, learn more about Danni, her competition, learn about my other competitors. All of that jazz should be linked below. And yeah, I really hope that however this competition ends, that we all just like end up having a great time, get to know other booktubers and all that jazz. So okay, thanks everyone, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.